Like that, Scarlett became the Mafia king's bride. Lorenzo had his reasons. He did not believe in peace or promises. He believed in dominance, in keeping enemies close, and in silencing threats before they spoke. Taking Scarlett was not about romance, it was about message. By killing Angelo and stealing his bride, Lorenzo declared war on his enemies and reshaped the criminal map of Europe. He knew Scarlett was valuable. She was smart, beautiful, and connected. She was not a pawn, she was a prize. But what he didn't expect was her fire. Scarlett did not beg. She did not scream. She stood tall, blood on her wedding gown and defiance in her eyes. In her world, men ruled and women survived, but Scarlett refused to break. When Lorenzo dragged her from the church and into his fortress, she knew she had to adapt fast. His world was one of silent killers, sharp suits, and deeper betrayals. His men were loyal but brutal. His home was a palace, but felt like a prison. He gave her a room, but it had locks. He gave her food, but it came with conditions. Yet every time he tried to bend her, she met him with steel. The dynamic between them shifted fast. Lorenzo was used to submission. He ruled through fear and respected no one, but Scarlett challenged him. She questioned his rules, pushed his buttons, and saw through his carefully built walls. She became a storm inside his kingdom, and that storm stirred something in him. He was drawn to her, not just physically but mentally. Her refusal to cower made her irresistible. She made him feel something he thought he'd buried years ago. When his family was torn apart by betrayal and his heart turned cold, Scarlett wasn't immune either. Lorenzo was danger and temptation. He was cruelty wrapped in charm. He offered her power and protection, but expected loyalty in return. Her feelings were a war within her. She hated him for what he'd done, for ripping her from one life and forcing her into another. But she couldn't deny the chemistry that sparked every time he touched her. And as she spent more time in his world, she began to see the man behind the monster. Lorenzo had been shaped by tragedy. The death of his younger brother had shattered him. His rise to power was painted in blood. Trust was not something he gave easily, but Scarlett made him see that control is not the same as strength and love is not the same as weakness. Slowly he let her in. He showed her the scars hidden beneath tattoos and tailored suits. He gave her pieces of himself no one else had ever seen. The deeper they fell, the more dangerous their union became. Rival families began to stir, sensing a fracture in Lorenzo's armor. The Falcone family demanded vengeance. Rumors spread of an inside betrayal. Someone close to Lorenzo was feeding information to his enemies. Scarlett became both shield and sword. She used her knowledge of politics and her instincts to sniff out lies and manipulate allies. She stepped into the role of queen, not because he asked her to, but because she chose to. And in doing so, she turned from captive to equal. Their love grew in secret moments and stolen nights. There was tenderness behind closed doors and fierce loyalty in public. But every step forward was met with a new threat. A failed assassination attempt nearly cost Lorenzo his life. Scarlett began receiving threats. Her maid was found dead, a warning left in blood. And then everything exploded when Scarlett was taken. She was kidnapped by Lorenzo's oldest rival, a man who once sat at the same table as his father. The message was clear. If Lorenzo wanted Scarlett back, he had to sacrifice everything. His territory, his men, his crown. For the first time in his life, Lorenzo faced a choice he couldn't calculate. To let her die and keep his empire, or burn it all to save her. There was no hesitation. He went after her with the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. What followed was not a rescue. It was a massacre. Lorenzo brought hell to their doorstep, and Scarlett rose from the ashes by his side. The war that followed was brutal. Every crime family took a side. The streets ran red, and alliances fell like dominoes. Scarlett fought not just with strategy but with grit. She had learned to read the room, to speak the language of killers. She became a legend among the men, not because she carried a gun, but because she knew exactly when to strike and how deep. And when the final battle came, she stood beside Lorenzo, not behind Jimin. The end, their love was forged in war. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't soft, but it was real. Lorenzo rebuilt his kingdom, not with fear, but with loyalty. Scarlett ruled with him not as a trophy, but as a partner. Together, they created a legacy that would never be forgotten. They turned a forced marriage into an unbreakable bond. They turned tragedy into power, and power into love. Mafia kings. Pride is a story of dominance turned devotion, of a woman who refused to be broken, and a man who learned to bend. A tale of stolen vows rewritten by choice, of fire and fury turned to passion. It is a reminder that even in the darkest places, love can take root. Not in whispers, but in war cries. Not in safety, but in danger. And not in fairy tales, but in blood-stained vows between a king and his queen. J. Summers delivers a gripping, emotionally charged tale with layered characters, high stakes, and a romance that defies expectation. Scarlett is not just a heroine, she is a revolution. Lorenzo is not just a villain, he is a man fighting his own demons. Their story is not about taming one another, but about rising together. It's a dark romance with teeth, with soul, and with the kind of fire that burns long after the last page.